readings today?
Yeah.
And we've never done this before?
No.
No.
I was expecting somebody older than this.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like,
In Sister's house, evening, the dining room was unusually quiet. Too quiet for a house that had once been filled with laughter that shook walls and voices that could barely be contained. The old wooden table, scarred and dented from years of family life, sat at the center like a silent witness. Every scratch and stain held a memory. Birthday candles, spilled milk, giggles, arguments, and endless nights of whispered secrets and shouted frustrations. But tonight held something heavier. Something invisible yet undeniable. A tension that no meal could mask. Amy moved around the table with deliberate slowness. Every fork, every knife, every napkin she placed was carefully measured. As if perfection in these small tasks could somehow prevent the chaos that lurked beneath the surface. Her hands were steady, but her chest was tight. Her breaths came in short, uneven bursts, the kind of breaths people take when they're trying not to cry, when they're trying not to let the fear escape, when they're carrying the weight of something too heavy to carry. MYVO. It had been far too long since we sat down together like this. Too long, and deep down, we all knew why. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Yet even these small, mundane noises felt loud, almost intrusive, echoing through the heavy stillness. The front door opened. Chris stepped inside, carrying a casserole dish wrapped in foil. The smell of baked cheese, roasted herbs, and tender chicken wafted into the room. Normally, it would make mouths water. Tonight, it only seemed to make the silence feel heavier, like a tangible weight pressing down on the air. His steps were careful, almost hesitant, as if any sudden motion could shatter the fragile peace. Each step was a small act of courage, carrying the awareness that what was about to unfold could not be taken back. He placed the dish in the center of the table. "Chris, all right? Food's ready." The words were ordinary, casual even. But nothing about this moment was ordinary. Nothing about this meal was casual. Amy looked at him. Their eyes met. A silent conversation passing between them. Without a single word, they acknowledged the truth. This was not just dinner. This was an intervention in disguise.
okay.
This was love wrapped in fear. A faint sound of wheels moved across the hardwood floor, and the subtle hiss of oxygen tubes followed. Tammy appeared, inch by inch, her wheelchair carrying more than just her body. Each movement seemed weighted with exhaustion, not only physical, but emotional. It took effort simply to be here, to face what they had been avoiding. To sit at this table was to confront a reality she had been putting off for too long. She reached her place at the table and stopped. No one spoke. No one needed to. The room was thick with unspoken understanding. Tammy's presence didn't fill the room as it once had. The loud laughter, the teasing, the energy that had always drawn everyone in, it was gone. Amy cleared her throat softly, the sound fragile. "Amy, you comfortable, sis?" Tammy barely nodded. A tiny, almost imperceptible gesture. Yet it carried the full weight of her exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion you can feel in your bones. The kind that seeps into your spirit. The kind that makes it almost impossible to show up to life. Amy sat, Chris sat, and together, they let the silence settle around them like a heavy blanket. Part 2. The shift, the food steamed in the soft glow of the overhead light. Chicken, golden and tender. Mashed potatoes, fluffy and creamy. Green beans glistening with a hint of butter. The kind of meal that on any other night would spark second helpings, laughter, stories about the day. Tonight, though, it felt like background noise. A prop in a scene that had been set for something much heavier. Chris picked up his fork, then set it down. He couldn't eat. Not yet. Not while the weight of the night pressed down so heavily. He looked at Tammy, really looked. Her face had changed, not just in shape, but in expression. Her eyes, once bright and playful, were dimmed by exhaustion, by the toll of years of fighting a body that felt like it had betrayed her. She carried the weight not just in her body, but in her spirit. And he saw it, really saw it, for the first time in months. "Chris, it's been a while since we've done this." A long while. Tammy didn't look up. Her fork moved slowly, almost mechanically, stirring green beans around her plate. It was a motion of habit, not hunger. Amy folded her hands in her lap, trying to steady the slight tremor that betrayed her fear. She had rehearsed every word all day, practiced every breath, every pause, every tone. Now that the moment had arrived, rehearsals didn't matter. Only the fear did. Fear of her words being rejected. Fear of Tammy shutting down. Fear of what would happen if they didn't speak at all. "Amy, I miss this. I miss us." Her voice cracked. Small, bare. Tammy's breath hitched. She didn't cry, not yet, but the pain was visible. In the tightening of her jaw, the subtle quiver of her lower lip, the slump of her shoulders under the invisible weight of her guilt and fear. "Tammy, yeah? Me, too." Her voice was soft, real, honest. Chris swallowed hard. He remembered the Tammy who had danced in the living room as a child, unrestrained and fearless. He remembered the Tammy who could make him laugh until his chest ached. He remembered the teenage girl who screamed at the music too loud, and the woman who loved so fiercely she sometimes lost herself in it. And he realized she was distant. Not in miles, but in spirit. "Chris, Tammy, we need to talk tonight." Really talk? The room seemed smaller, the table longer, the space between them impossible to measure. Tammy didn't look up, okay? But she nodded. She had known this conversation was coming. Okay, she had known it the moment she received the invitation. She had known it the moment she wheeled into the room. This wasn't dinner. This was desperation made flesh. Part 3. The walls began to lower. Chris leaned forward, elbows on the table, fingers interlaced, bracing himself. "Chris, we're worried about you." Tammy's fork paused mid-motion. She didn't protest. She didn't roll her eyes. She didn't argue. She just breathed. Shaky, uneven, human. "Tammy, I know." Not defensive, not dismissive, simply tired. Amy reached out her hand slowly, giving Tammy space to pull away if she needed to. She didn't. "Amy, we've tried to give you space. Time, patience, but sis." Her voice cracked, the weight of it breaking through any pretense. "Why can't? We're scared. We're losing you." Tammy's eyes glistened, tears threatening to fall, but refusing. Because falling would mean admitting. Casing would mean breaking. Chris's voice softened, measured, honest. "Chris, this is kind of like an ultimatum. And I hate that. I really do. But if things don't change, you're going to need real help. Somewhere that can support you in ways we can't." The silence that followed was full, heavy, suffocating, unrelenting. Tammy's chest rose and fell. One small, trembled breath, enough to hint at the storm beneath the surface. "Tammy, I'm trying." A whisper. Soft, vulnerable. True, Amy's eyes shimmered with silent tears. "Amy, we know. We see you trying, but trying isn't enough anymore. Not with your life on the line.
I got tired of Chris and Amanda making fun of me. I asked them to quit repeatedly, and they kept going and kept going. So I was like, I'd rather go.
The morning sun filtered softly through the thin curtains of the small-town lodge, brushing the edges of the furniture with gentle gold and casting long, lazy streaks across the floor. The air was calm, almost tender, yet inside Tammy, a storm of heaviness pressed down on her chest. Yesterday's appointment with Dr. Proctor weighed on her, pressing not just on her body, but on her mind, her spirit, and her very sense of self. Sitting in her wheelchair, she traced the edge of the placemat absent-mindedly, her fingers moving slowly as if trying to anchor her thoughts in something tangible. Her breathing, even through the BPAP machine, was steady but deliberate, a constant reminder of how fragile everything had become. In the kitchenette, Chris moved carefully, deliberately, avoiding the squeak of the linoleum beneath his feet. He was aware of the delicate balance of this morning, how fragile Tammy's mood could be. How easily a misstep, a word, or even a glance could tip her into despair. He had learned over the years to navigate these mornings like a tightrope walker, one careful movement at a time. "Breakfast ain't complicated today," he said gently, his voice attempting to lighten the weight in the room. "Just egg white omelets and some yogurt." Tammy's gaze fell on the bowl of yogurt, pale and thick, glistening under the morning light. Her lips pressed together, and for a moment, it seemed she might erupt into one of her sharper, sarcastic retorts, but instead, she poked at it slowly, almost as if she were examining a threat she could not quite name. "Is this Greek or normal?" she asked softly, eyes narrowing just slightly. "Greek," Chris replied with a nod, almost smiling. Tammy's face twisted in disgust. "Great," she muttered. "So we're starting the day with disappointment." Her voice held a trace of humor, but it was thin, fragile. Chris chuckled softly. There was nothing else to do when life handed you yogurt that tasted like sadness. Tammy scooped a tiny taste with her spoon, her hand hesitant, the movement almost ritualistic. The grimace that followed was immediate. "Nope, no, throw this in the trash. Burn the whole town down if you have to," she declared, shoving the bowl aside with more force than the yogurt deserved. Chris shook his head, trying to hold back laughter, though the corners of his mouth betrayed him. "It's healthy," he said gently. "That's why it tastes like sadness." But beneath the levity, a shadow lingered. The memory of the doctor's words hovered in Tammy's mind like a phantom, pressing in from all sides. "You are running out of time. Your body cannot continue like this." She could still feel the sterile chill of the office, the antiseptic scent lingering in the air, the low hum of the fluorescent lights above. She remembered how her stomach had dropped, the panic clawing at her throat as she struggled to breathe past the shame. She had been trying, truly trying, but sometimes trying felt like drowning. And the ocean of her own life felt endless and merciless. Chris slid into the chair across from her, leaving the humor behind. "I know yesterday was rough," he said quietly, genuinely. Tammy didn't look up. She didn't need to. Years of shared silence had taught them both that words were often unnecessary between them. "I knew it wasn't going to be good," she admitted, voice low and brittle, the kind that made every word feel heavy. "I knew, but hearing it like that, it hits different." She swallowed, hard and deliberate, a small shudder passing through her chest. Chris nodded. "We've been through bad before," he said, voice steady, soothing. "And we always get back up. This is just another time to stand back up." He wasn't lecturing. He wasn't scolding. He was simply present, entirely and completely, the way a sibling who loved you unconditionally could be. Tammy poked at her omelet, barely touching it. "Sometimes it's not even the cravings," she murmured. "Sometimes it's just the boredom, the quiet, the loneliness. That's when it gets bad. That's when the food starts calling, like it's the only thing in the world that understands me." Chris leaned forward slightly, absorbing every word, every nuance. For the first time, he felt the weight of her struggle in a way that wasn't filtered through frustration or annoyance. Not the excuses, not the stubbornness, just the raw, aching loneliness. "You feel like you've been doing this alone?" he said softly, almost reverently. Her silence was answer enough. She didn't need to speak. She didn't need to explain herself. Her eyes told him everything. And the truth they held was heavier than words could carry. Chris turned his gaze inward, examining his own hands, his own failures. The years he had spent avoiding the mirror and the reflection it showed him. He had his own battles, his own guilt. But suddenly it all seemed smaller next to the realization that Tammy had been fighting mostly on her own end. They had let her. "Look," he said finally, voice firm yet tender. "I'm not just going to tell you to do it. I'm going to do it with you. Diet, exercise, everything. We'll take it on together." Tammy blinked, surprised. "You'd do that. I need it too," he admitted, a faint, humorous lilt creeping back into his voice. "My doctor's been yelling at me for years. This old belly ain't shrinking by wishing on it." A small laugh escaped Tammy, tired and dry, but real. The room felt lighter, as though a weight had been lifted, just enough to let the morning sun in fully. "Okay, let's do it." "Together," she said. Chris nodded. one day at a time. "We'll take our lives back," he said, his voice carrying a quiet promise. Breakfast passed in relative silence after that, punctuated by small conversations, tiny confessions, and shared glances. Tammy described the monotony of her days, the physical strain of even small movements, the mental and emotional exhaustion that made every step feel monumental. Chris listened, absorbing each detail, learning about the fear that sometimes kept her from leaving her room, the comfort she found in food, the despair that followed failure. By mid-morning, it was time to face another challenge, leaving the house. For Tammy, even a short trip outside had become monumental, an obstacle that loomed larger than any mountain. The world had become a place of judgment, a mirror reflecting insecurities and magnifying them 1,000 times over. Chris prepared the minivan carefully, folding and adjusting seats, making space for Tammy's wheelchair, her oxygen equipment, and the BPAP machine. Every detail mattered, every precaution was necessary. She climbed in cautiously, each movement deliberate, her nerves taut as strings. She hadn't been in a car in years 7, maybe 8, and the idea of navigating the world outside filled her with both terror and anticipation. "Are you scared?" Chris asked gently, hand hovering near hers for reassurance. "Yeah," she admitted, voice small. "I don't know how much pain I'll be in. I don't know if I could fall. Or worse." "You'll be okay," he said. "I've got you." Every step, every mile. The drive stretched long before them, 8 hours to the rehab facility that would begin her transformation. Tammy rested intermittently, eyes closed, breathing carefully through the mask, her thoughts drifting between fear, hope, and the overwhelming sense of the journey ahead. Chris talked softly, telling stories of home, of small moments to distract from the anxiety. He reminded her of the support waiting for her, of the family who would fight beside her, of the man who had decided to walk this path together. Hours passed in a strange rhythm, sometimes quiet, sometimes punctuated by small jokes or soft commentary on the scenery. With each passing mile, Tammy grew slightly more at ease, not completely, but enough to trust that she could navigate the unknown. When they arrived at the facility, the nerves returned. The staff welcomed them warmly, guiding them through paperwork, protocols, and introductions. Tammy's heart raced with each interaction, the weight of the unknown pressing down. But Chris stayed by her side, providing a steadying presence. Hand in hand, they navigated each challenge together, a silent promise passing between them with every step. As she settled into the room for the night, Tammy allowed herself a rare moment of quiet reflection. This was it. This was her moment, not just to fight for her weight, but for her life, her independence, her future. Chris stayed by her side, offering encouragement, small jokes, stories of home, and reminders that she was not alone. The facility staff offered guidance and care, but it was Chris's presence that grounded her. Hours passed. Tammy's mind wandered to memories of her childhood with Amy, to the struggles and failures, the laughter and fleeting moments of joy that seemed so distant now. She considered the future, imagining what might be possible if she fought, if she survived, if she truly changed. Before leaving for the night, Chris knelt beside her bed. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. "You've got this. We're all behind you." Tammy closed her eyes. The path ahead was uncertain, long and frightening. But for the first time, she felt hope. She wasn't alone. She had someone who believed in her, who would fight beside her. One day at a time, they would reclaim their lives together. One day at a time, they would reclaim their lives together.
So now I've completely quit vaping nicotine unless I get agitated.
Sunlight streamed through the half-open blinds, casting long, narrow shadows across the cluttered living room. Boxes of every size were stacked haphazardly along the walls, some taped, some not, each containing pieces of a life that had been lived fully. Messily, and without much pause for reflection, Amy slumped onto a chair, feeling the weight of the past 2 months pressed down on her like an invisible hand. Remodeling the house had been exhausting, and now moving day had arrived in a rush, faster than she could mentally prepare for. "Go get me a fat soda." She called toward Chris, her voice attempting lightness, though exhaustion clung to every word. I don't think we'll get a dog anytime soon, but I do want the boys to have an animal. Chris chuckled, moving carefully to avoid stepping on scattered toys. Yeah, little? Are you being a big helper today? No, not really, the boy admitted, shrugging. But Amy smiled faintly, remembering that even small gestures counted, even in the chaos of packing. The house felt alive with activity, but also heavy with memories. Each piece of furniture, each framed photograph, each corner held a story. Laughter, tears, fights, triumphs. The moving van outside hummed softly, a reminder that life was shifting, and with it, everything familiar was about to change. Amy took a deep breath. Well, what do you want me to help with? Chris gestured to a chair near the kitchen. You can sit in that, move some stuff, and clean out the fridge if you want. Amy laughed tiredly. Hopefully, we can get the biggest part done today. The thought of leaving this house, her first home as a married woman and mother, made her chest tighten. She was emotionally and physically drained. Dreams of a white picket fence, of children playing safely in a yard she could call her own, clashed with memories of fights, struggles, and nights filled with tears. The house was more than wood and paint. It was a repository of history, good and bad. Chris noticed her pause, her eyes lingering on the empty space where Gage's crib used to be. Why are you so upset? Amy's voice was soft, almost a whisper. It's weird seeing the crib gone. It's an improvement, yes, but it still hurts. She rubbed her eyes, exhausted. I'm just tired. Emotionally, physically, ready to collapse. Chris moved closer, offering a steady presence. We've been through rough spots before. We always get back up. This is just another one of those times. Amy's mind drifted to the years of dreaming, planning, saving. She remembered scarcity, the feeling of never having enough, the drive to create something better for her family. And yet, as she surveyed the boxes and taped furniture, she felt the familiar ache of fear of leaving, fear of the unknown, fear of losing the familiar comforts that, even when flawed, had been home. She turned to Chris. Sometimes it's not the cravings, it's the boredom, the quiet, the loneliness. That's when it gets bad. That's when the food calls to me. Chris's chest tightened. He had heard her words before, but the full weight landed now. He didn't need her to explain. He felt it's the isolation, the silent struggle, the longing for connection, even when masked by anger or frustration. You feel like you've been doing this alone, he said softly. Her silence said more than words ever could. Chris took a deep breath. Look, I'm not just going to tell you to do it. I'll do it with you. Diet, exercise, everything, together. Her eyes widened in surprise. You'd really do that? I need it too, he admitted. My doctor's been yelling at me for years. This old belly ain't shrinking by wishing on it. Amy laughed, a small, exhausted sound, the tension easing just a little. Okay, together then. Packing and emotional flashbacks. Part 2, boxes were moved. Shelves were dismantled. The refrigerator was emptied and scrubbed. Misty and Brandon had been pillars of support, and their presence made the task less daunting. But Amy's thoughts wandered unbidden. To Tammy, she had expected her sister to be there to at least offer some emotional support. A word, a gesture, but Tammy had stayed away. Amy bit her lip, frustration bubbling under her fatigue. I can't get any help. I help you constantly, but you can't even be here, she muttered under her breath. Chris put a hand on her shoulder. You're doing amazing. Focus on what you have control over. She nodded, though her heart still ached. This house had been full of love, yes, but also tension, fights, and moments of deep disappointment. And yet leaving it behind was not just a physical act. It was emotional, symbolic, and terrifying. She paused to remember. Wedding days, baby milestones, weight loss victories, arguments. Reconciliations, all layered like paint on the walls. She had dreamed of this, worked for it, sacrificed for it. And now, finally, it was tangible. But dreams, she realized, came with their own burdens. Therapy and confrontations. Part 3 later, Tammy and Amy sat in the therapy room, the air thick with tension. Words were exchanged, emotions raw, sometimes spilling over into tears. "Are you willing, Amy, to commit to not getting her unhealthy foods?" the therapist asked. Amy hesitated. "So it's my fault she eats big because I buy the food. You're responsible for what you do," the therapist said gently. "But you can't control her choices. You can only control yours." Tammy's eyes filled with frustration. "I just want to. I don't know. I want to live my life. Stop blaming me." The room was quiet except for soft breathing and the ticking of a clock. Amy looked at her sister, then at herself, then back again. Food addiction wasn't just physical, it was emotional, psychological, relational. Their bond, strong but unhealthy, required change. And change was terrifying. Medical updates and weight loss journey, part 4. Amy stepped onto the scale at Dr. Smith's office, heart pounding. 265, 2, the nurse called. Relief flooded her in a warm, dizzying wave. She had been waiting for this day for 3 years, the approval for skin removal surgery. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. She had done it. Every pound lost, every struggle endured, every moment of self-control had led here. Chris followed closely, pride etched into every line of his face. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. Amy swallowed hard, nodding. "Thank you. Thank you for believing in me." Tammy, meanwhile, was nervous about her own upcoming appointment. "I'm 18 months out from surgery," she admitted. "I'm anxious. I don't want to get turned down again." Dr. Turner examined her carefully. "Tammy, you've made incredible progress. Skin removal will be possible, but it's going to require multiple surgeries. You have head-to-toe loose skin. We need a team approach." Tammy nodded, swallowing frustration. I wanted it all done at once." "Patience, planning, and care," Dr. Turner said. "This is about longevity, health, and recovery." Homecoming and adjustment, part 5. Tammy returned home, the crisp Kentucky air brushing against her face as the van rolled up. Amy, Michael, and Gage waited outside. The reunion was quiet, hugs were minimal, expressions guarded, but beneath it lay a current of hope and fear. Tammy's first steps into the house were hesitant. "Are you sure you want to come home?" Amy asked. "I do," Tammy said, trying to sound confident. "I want to do this on my own." The next days were a mixture of adaptation, tension, and small victories. A new cooktop and table had been delivered to help Tammy be independent in the kitchen. She experimented with recipes, some disasters, some passable. But the effort mattered more than perfection. Meals were shared, laughter occasionally broke through, and slowly a rhythm emerged. But the underlying challenges, the history, the addictions, the family dynamics remained. Pressing against every new step forward. Conclusion and reflections, part 6 through therapy, medical appointments, moving, and adaptation. Amy and Tammy's lives had transformed. Weight had been lost, surgeries were planned, and independence was being cultivated. But the journey was ongoing. Each day brought decisions, temptations, frustrations, and triumphs. Amy reflected on the life they were building. Home ownership, stability, health, and family. Tammy reflected on hers, independence, responsibility, self-care, and hope. Both knew the road ahead would be long, but together, or at least alongside each other, they could face it. The sun set on the freshly painted walls and packed boxes, signaling not just the end of a moving day, but the continuation of a lifelong journey.